Rule 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them.
Oh.
This rule is going to be a little touchy.
I almost want to try not. I do this.
If we were going to skip any rule, this would be one that we would skip.
Yeah. I'm going to say that he does an amazing job at saying and addressing some of the issues that most people just won't touch with a 10-foot pole.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of things, and I think from where I'm at, when I grew up, to the children that grow up in today's society, there are things that are 1,000, not 100, 1,000% different.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I'm more of the person that is adapt to change.
Mm-hmm.
I can learn and appreciate. And now that I have a bit more knowledge, I understand how things are going. Yet I'm still from the old world. Like I grew up when I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that I grew up with that unfortunately don't hold water today.
Yeah.
With how the children are being raised and how they're growing up. And a part of me feels sad about that, because that's how I grew up, and that's a part of who I am and why I'm such a strong person.
Yep.
But at the same time, I understand a little bit as to why it's happening. And, I'm an optimist, so I have a little bit of faith that humanity will take its turn naturally.
Yeah.
But then again, I grew up in the way I grew up. And maybe that's my biased opinion as to why things shouldn't be the way they are nowadays. But to each their own.
And I have a similar agreement to that. I mean, yes, we come from the old school before it kind of turned a little softer.
Yeah.
I'm from the opinion, I think things need to firm back up a little bit. And I like what you have to say where, you know what, the world will correct. Things will correct itself. It'll self-correct.
They all come in cycles.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that once we tip to one side, and maybe that's a good point to bring about this book. Like this book, I mean, if you look at the title, it's actually an antidote to chaos, right? 12 rules of life, and then an antidote to chaos. And then again, this book is just another reminder that all things, right? You have the good, you have the bad, right? Good and evil, order and chaos. And yes, we do tend to go one way or the other, but eventually things correct themselves naturally.
Those market corrections.
Yeah, just like the market, right? After expansion comes recession. After recession comes expansion. That's part of life.
It's
in the circle.
Circle of life.
Them Disney movies.
And maybe it's a question in me or whatever, but it's like we can stop the shit right now, though. Just cut it out.
Yeah, that brings a good point about that kid who couldn't go to sleep, I guess.
Oh man, that's a good story.
I'll let you tell it. You
all right.
Man over there.
So I guess the story goes, Jordan and Peterson, I guess their little neighborhood, their friend community, they would bring each other's kids over to each other's house to babysit, and then the parents would go out on a date. So the one friend comes over, drops off his son, and he's like, let me tell you right now, he ain't going to go to sleep. We're going to put him down. He's going to jump up. We just throw on an Elmo movie and, just let that ride out and he'll fall asleep. Jordan Peterson's like, oh, sounds great. In his head, he's like, I don't play that.
He's old school, right?
There ain't no Muppet. You ain't getting rewarded for not going to sleep with some weird old Muppet guy. I was like, oh, here we go with this one. I liking the way this sounds. But then he goes and he puts the kids to bed. He puts the kid in the crib. He's like, that was the first step. He's in the crib. He can't leave the bed. So there we go. So one thing differently, I guess it seems like, than the child's parents are doing. And he said, he walks away and sure enough, man, here he goes. Starts yelling and crying and whatever. And Jordan Peterson's like, you ain't waking up the other kids. Then we have a real big problem. Goes in there, and he's like, tells the kid, lay down, go to sleep. And the kid's like, no. So, I put him down, lay down. Kid's like, pops back up. Jordan Peterson's like, oh, this kid's got some spirit. I like this. All right. But I'm bigger, and I'm stronger. And I'm going to win this battle.
I got way more patience.
We are all weak, man. Can't handle this. You're going to be tired eventually. So then he said, he goes through his little things, like he pats his back. And I was like, I remember doing that to Titus when he couldn't sleep. I would pat his back and kind of rub his back. And then eventually, kids kind of starts to doze off. And I kind of patted back. I started walking away. Boom, he pops right back up. He's like, man, this kid's got some spirit. And he goes, lay down. And the kid, boom, he lays down and he goes to sleep. Yeah. And then the dad comes on, how was he? Like, oh, it was great. Went right to sleep. That dad was like, and he's like, and Jordan Peterson's like, I knew he wanted to ask how I did it.
Yeah.
But he didn't. And I didn't tell him because he wasn't ready to hear it. I was like,
you gotta read this book, you'll find out. Right?
Like, oh yeah, right, exactly. Pick up my book and you'll see how your son went to sleep. And I was like, man, and then I want to say he went on to say that him and that child had a better relationship later on.
Right.
Maybe I'm mixing stories together, but
possibly. But that happens naturally, right? Again, getting back to, this book goes through so many rules. It's just like, make friends with people who want the best for you, rule 3. Like that's all part of it. Like once the child sees that you have their best interest in it, now this becomes a reciprocal thing.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Jordan Peterson really cared. He cared about what his friend, the little boy, life was about. Like, back to rule 1. If you're not getting sleep, you can't fight off anxiety and depression and all these things.
Yeah, exactly.
And then maybe your parents are going to be rushing. You don't have a good breakfast now. Then what? When the snakes come, you can't fight off the snakes in the grass.
All right, well, it's not get too far.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, they all just so bleed together. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and that's just kind of it too. It's like, getting ahead of myself, but like, if that step never happened, right? Like, if you don't control that, maybe control is the wrong word. If you don't correct those types of behaviors in the child when they grow up, like, there might be consequences in the future for that.
And that's the thing I like when he says in his book. He's like, if you don't discipline your kids, the world will. And they don't love and care for your kids.
Exactly.
Is that what you want? Like, I was like, wow. Like, I was listening to that, like, this part with my wife in the car, and she was like, oh, no, I get that. I don't want to work. And it's like, that's just what I'm saying. Like, maybe, you don't like
maybe that's where all this hate from millennials comes. You know what I'm saying? Just like something wasn't right, some type of activity wasn't corrected for them in their younger stages. Yeah. And now this is society telling you, hey, look, this ain't right. You're getting punished. You're getting ostracized for your behaviors. Why? Because that's what society deems that's worthy of a person of your age and stature.
Yeah, now you can't function in society. You cannot interact in society. You cannot walk into society and be a good person or somebody that people want to be around.
Right. And it's just like, because in society, there are natural orders of things, right? Mm-hmm. And millennials show signs of things that aren't natural in society.
Yeah. You can't jump the lobster rounds.
Yeah. So, and that's just, again, I believe as a human race, all things come in cycles. We're going to get through this.
We'll have a market correction.
And there's futures, but.
And I think we're starting to see some of that market correction now. We're like, listen, like, we've got to think about this and talk about this, millennial thing and trying to work through this kind of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, it gets back to the whole thing. I know you're ranting and raving on like the parents out there say like, oh, I want to let him be creative. I don't want to smash his creative ideas.
And
Like,
that's the thing I've said before. Like, I hate that excuse. You're like, oh, well, why is there no discipline or rules? I'm letting him be creative. Like, and then Jordan Peterson says that in his book that actually limits creativity. And I'm like, yes, we all want discipline and rules and structures. And it's like, and that's what he tells a little story about the one kid, because his parents were so unwilling to discipline the child. By letting him be free and have freedom, by not having rules, the child could not explore because the parents had to constantly wander behind the child and intervene with them. So therefore, he could not explore the world because the parents wouldn't set rules, wouldn't say no. So it's like, what are you really cultivating?
I got what you're saying, but I'm just going to try and build upon that. Is the fact that, you know, yes, the parents had to be there to, you know, because your child can get out of hand and they're correcting them at every turn. Yet if you get the principles, right, if you can raise the child to follow the rules of society, then they can truly go out on their own, right, without any parental, right, and be guided instead of having a parent behind them all the time, or maybe not a parent, something else behind them all the time, correcting every action they make. And, you know, and I think that's another thing too that he brings to light is like, look, society is out there. You know, if you teach your child to work well with society, that child will do better in life.
Yes.
You know? And I don't know. I mean, I get it. There's sometimes I don't want to discipline my son, but there's times when I think, well, if I don't do this, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You know, what are the consequences for him in the future if he continues this attitude and he continues the things that he's doing and society sees that? What is society going to do?
Right. Or even that, what's that escalating behavior? It's like, oh, I kind of got away with cheating on this test. Like, oh, what else? Oh, I pickpocketed a little. Oh, okay, I didn't get in trouble. Like, oh, I shoplifted a little. I didn't get in trouble. Like,
there's part of that that's healthy. I mean, part of that is testing rules. You need to, but at the same time, part of testing rules is learning consequences.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And when there is no consequences, or you start to think, oh, I'm slick, I ain't going to get caught. Then that's when things come down on you.
Right.
And the older you get, it goes from, Timmy's suspended from school to Timmy's in the detention center to Timmy's doing 5 to 10.
Retrospect. Yeah. I mean, that's a little bit of a slippery slope, but
it is.
I see where you're going with it. But the same thing can do. I mean, I'm not only talking about consequences, and he's not even talking about consequences. No. He's talking about rewarding too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When children do things that are proper, when they do things that make you proud, when you reward them for that.
Yeah. And that's the thing I really like. And that's the thing I really liked in here when he was like, he's like, oh, you're a good boy. And he's like, and I damn well meant it. And I'm like,
that's true.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, I hate when you see people and like, oh, yeah, good job. You didn't even acknowledge that for real. Like, And then what happens the next time? It's like, hey, I did this thing, but you don't really care anyway. So, maybe I just will stop doing things because you don't care anyway. But that's the thing I like. Like, you gotta what does it take? 30 fucking seconds to just have a real, genuine, like, goddamn, that was great. I'm so proud of you.
No. Don't forget about those bottom lobsters. They don't know how to do that.
Hey, start in the doorways. Start standing up straight. If you look up.
But and the beauty of this book is everything kind of alludes back.
Yeah.
Like if you don't know how to hold your head up straight and your shoulders back, when your son does it, you're not going to reward him for that.
Yes.
It's
you get together, start doing the doorway drill.
It's kind of tricky, man. But, definitely I do like the part about rewarding for sure.
Yes.
And definitely anytime you engage in that type of activity, rewarding, like pat on the back, saying things like, again, there's an energy that emits from your body. Right? You have nonverbal cues.
Yeah.
Look in the eye, make sure the energy coming is actually from a place of gratitude
Yeah.
like from a place of wellness and good intention. Be like, son, that was awesome. You did a really good job. I'm very, very proud of you. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's great. Or son, I love you. It's
Yeah.
just like, as simple as that.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's, you know, with me, I work from home. And so when the kids come home from school, I will stop what I'm doing, you know, and then once in a great while, I'm like, can you give me like 3 minutes? And then I'll spend as much time as you need to talk to you, you know?
Yeah, of course.
And I'll sit there and it's a lot of times it's just chatter. It's just whatever. But I understand that this interaction is important. You know what I mean? To you I don't give a flying fuck. I don't understand half the shit that's even being talked about. But I can take that genuine moment for a few minutes. It's way more valuable than me sitting next to you for 2 hours. You know what I'm saying? And not having any interaction. Like, that's the thing so people understand too. Like, oh, I spent lots of time with my kids. You two sat next to each other on the couch. Doesn't count. You know what I mean? I had a 15-minute conversation that will be way more memorable and way more impactful than the latter, you know?
Right. I don't necessarily agree with spending time. Like, there's mannerisms and stuff that you do just sitting next to your child that they can pick up on.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
If you're following the rules correctly, you believe in yourself, you have energies coming off you, that's great. But I'm a firm believer in both. If you can do both, you got to sit down there and spend that quality time. You got to get that direct image out there. You got to make an impression on your child, right? Yes. And at the same time, you do have to spend some amount of time with them, next to them, so that they can mirror your mannerisms and become that. You know? But also, even more importantly, is sometimes you have to execute consequences.
That's the only way there is such a thing.
You know,
if you do not execute consequences, there's no such thing as consequences.
Well, if you don't execute consequences, basically what you're saying is there's no rules.
Yes. Yeah. Your rules don't matter because there's no penalty for breaking them.
You know, and for me, you know, when I used to, I mean, I don't have to anymore, but when my son was young, I did execute the consequence. And sometimes I did it in public and people would look at me like, oh, like, you know, and I'm like, well, I know better. I know what happens. I know better than to teach my child that there are no rules in life.
Yeah.
Because when you teach them that there are no rules in life, then things become a different place.
Or like your example, you can also teach them that these rules only apply at home. Because when I go in public, I don't ever get in trouble.
Whatever the case might be, it's just, I definitely believe that if you don't execute consequences, you're teaching children that there are no rules. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, granted, there's a lot of things out there, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to get into arguments about what is discipline and what is abuse, right? That's a completely different argument. You know, however, there has to be some type of punishment.
Yeah. And if you're if you're interested in what he has to say about different types of punishment stuff, he does a very, very eloquent job of kind of going through that. I would definitely recommend if it's something you need help with or you're interested in, I would definitely recommend that.
But definitely all of these things are part of, you know, what we want as parents.
Yes.
Basically the main bottom of the life is like your child eventually one day will go out there into society. You know, eventually they are going to be part of something that is greater.
Yeah.
You know, get them in tune, right? Get them in tune with what's happening with the world. Get them in tune and prepared for when that day comes. That does include making rules, giving consequences when rules are not followed, and giving rewards when rules are followed. And he does a wonderful job of expressing that, dude.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Very good. You want more on that? Definitely get into that chapter. Even if you just stop by the library or the bookstore and you just kind of hit through that chapter real quick. I mean, he does a really good job.